Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome everyone to this World Investment Forum session on facilitating the Special Economic Zone City Link, organized in partnership with UNCTAD. My name is Jacopo Dettoni. I am the editor of FDI Intelligence, the foreign investment monitor of the Financial Times in London. And more importantly, today I will be moderating this session where we will discuss the role that special economic zones play and can play in the sustainable development of urban areas. And we will do so with representatives from UNCTAD and UNCTAD, as well as special economic zones and urban authorities themselves. As you may know, the number of free zones in any shape or form has ballooned in the past decade, despite fully levels of foreign global direct investment. Although much research has yet to go into the reasons behind the success or failure of special economic zones, there is evidence suggesting that SEZs located close to major transport infrastructure like airports, ports, and dry ports, as well as close to markets and labor pools, have a better chance to succeed. Therefore, special economic zones often gravitate around major cities, where their tenants can find infrastructure, markets, and workers. However, this symbiosis between cities and special economic zones has not always provided a platform for mutual benefits. Some special economic zones have become enclaves with little interconnection with their surrounding environment. I personally visited a few where the intense business activity within the zone stood in stark contrast with the private neighborhoods in its surroundings. However, other SEZs have been more capable of lifting their urban surroundings, and today we will hear further about some of these more successful experiences. The pandemic has hit hard both cities and special economic zones. The need for this symbiosis to be mutually beneficial has never been more present. Cities need special economic zones to add momentum to their recovery program and sustainable development agenda. And zones need cities to provide prospective tenants with a compelling business landscape. We will discuss this all with our panelists today, but first let me introduce Mr. Richard Bolwijn, who is the head of investment research at UNCTAD, for his opening remarks. Mr. Bolwijn, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jacopo. Thanks for an excellent introduction. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you today to this third day of UNCTAD's World Investment Forum, and specifically to this event that will focus on facilitating the Special Economic Zones City Link. A big thank you to our colleagues at UNCTAD for having co-organized this session with us. Actually, our organizations have collaborated on sustainable urbanization and special economic zones for quite some time now. In 2020, when we still could, we co-organized a session during the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi on the subject, and we published several joint papers on investment and urban development. So today's event is really a continuation of this collaboration. And our aim is that our panelists will exchange experiences about how the city SEZ link can be successfully developed in cities and countries where they operate. And the panel will discuss the role of SEZs in achieving resilient recovery post-pandemic. So we'll pay special attention to the important role of local economic actors and local city leaders, local organizations, including investment promotion agencies, in collaborating and working together with SEZs. Now, as Jacopo already mentioned, SEZs continue to be widely used across all regions, and they have a host of economic policy objectives they have varying degrees of impact. Now, as the policymakers are increasingly looking to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, the success of SEZs is increasingly defined in terms of how they can contribute to sustainable urbanization. And actually, that's even more important now because the COVID-19 pandemic has brought to light some of the challenges associated with increased urbanization, including densely populated and poorly planned areas. Urban centers have not only been epicenters for the transmission of the virus, but also proved to be challenging settings at times for responding effectively to the pandemic. So we are seeing interurban inequalities exacerbated, with the most vulnerable sectors of society, including urban informal sectors, being hard hit by the negative economic consequences of the crisis. So in a post-pandemic context, the role of SEZs to contribute to sustainable urbanization is even more important, but also even more challenging. Now, this relationship, or symbiosis, as Jacopo called it, it goes both ways, right? The existence or the presence of SEZs significantly affects the urbanization landscape, and the urbanization process at the same time creates a mix of factors that influences the location and design of special economic zones. Now, we already heard that the strategic location close to key infrastructure hubs, the large markets that cities represent, the labor and talent pools that cities have, is of course fundamental to attracting investors into the zones. So the presence near zones is really crucial for the success of an SEZ. But at the same time, as the presence of SEZs can encourage the development of nearby urban areas. The establishment of SEZs can catalyze investment in supporting infrastructure, including transport, water and sewage, electricity, including renewable energy generation, housing, and not only within the zones, but also in its periphery, so in the urban areas surrounding it. So in addition, as infrastructure, and particularly digital infrastructure, is a critical determinant for attracting FDI to zones, the deployment of digital infrastructure within and around zones can really have positive spillovers in the surrounding urban areas. So that is why in our 2019 World Investment Report, we proposed a framework for sustainable economic zones to help SEZs not only enhance their competitiveness, but also to help increase the contribution of SEZs to its surrounding areas. By switching from a narrow focus on cost advantages, which is the traditional view of SEZs, to championing sustainable development. Actually, on Friday, one of our forums, of the World Investment Forum sessions, will be devoted to discussing SDG model zones for this purpose. Now, let me just conclude. So let me conclude saying, so while the SEZs and cities clearly are in symbiosis, I really like that word, Jacopo, thank you. So they can mutually benefit each other. Those mutual benefits are clearly not automatic. We already heard from Jacopo that there are sometimes enclave effects with little benefits for surrounding zones. So that does happen. And that because these benefits are not automatic, policy really matters. So that's really one of the things we need to discuss today. And I'm hoping to get out of this panel some good ideas for policy making to maximize the sustainable development contribution and sustainable urbanization contributions of zones. So, ladies and gentlemen, our panel today is composed of city leaders, investment promotion agencies, special economic zones, and I look forward to learning from your experiences in working towards sustainable urbanization and sustainable SEZs. And as we go ahead and try to strengthen our work on SEZs, your inputs today will be very useful to us to guide our agenda. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jacopo.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for these introductory remarks and for setting the tone for the panel that is just about to follow. Let me introduce our speakers for this panel discussion on facilitating the link between special economic zones and cities. Connecting for eThekwini in South Africa, we have Mr. Musa Mbhele, who is a freshly appointed acting city manager of the eThekwini Municipality, which is home to the Dube Trade Port, a diversified special economic zones that is developed around the local international airport. Connecting from Hong Kong, we have Mr. Stephen Phillips, who is the Director General of Invest Hong Kong, the local investment promotion agency. Hong Kong is a city that, although per se is not a special economic zone, borrowed quite a few pages from the SEZ playbook, and is also part of the Greater Bay Area vision, bringing together Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau, which makes extensive use of SEZ instruments. Connecting from the US, we have Mr. Juan Pablo Rivera, who is the CEO of the Grupo Zona Franca de Bogotá, a diversified free zones in Colombia's capital, Bogotá, that has gained a name for its innovation drive and has really become a reference for free zones across the Americas region. Last but not least, connecting from Doha, we have Mr. Abdulla Al-Misnad, the Deputy CEO of the Qatar Free Zones Authority, the national authority that oversees the development of the country's two free zones. Welcome to our speakers. On top of them, we have two discussants that coordinated a recent research into special economic zones and urbanizations, and will contribute with their inputs as the discussion progresses. Ms. Stephania Bonilla-Feret, who is an economic affairs officer at UNCTAD, and Mr. Herman Pienaar, who is a program management officer and urban lab lead at UN Habitat. So welcome again to all the speakers, and let's get straight to the discussion. Mr. Mbhele, let me start with you. The Dube Trade Port was launched in 2010, and the vision there is really to develop a diversified special economic zones, offering integrated logistics and manufacturing infrastructure, and a wide array of other airport-related services and businesses. So how does, from the perspective of the municipality of eThekwini, how does the Dube Trade Port fit the local government's vision for sustainable urban development? Thank you.
The mic, please.
You're still on mute, Mr. Mbhele.
Greetings to you, Program Director, greetings to other fellow panelists. Let me start off by explaining very briefly that as a constitutional democracy, we've got three spheres. So there's a national sphere, which is the national government, there's a provincial sphere, and the local sphere, which is what we are part of as the city. Dube Trade Port is an agency of the provincial government department, but it is located within the city because our city is a gateway to Africa and the world, because we have the busiest harbor in the continent. So it makes sense that the SEZ is located here. Our understanding of sustainable urbanization is that it is an urbanization process through which the quality of life of urban citizens is improved to such an extent that equity prevails over things such as access to services, employment opportunities, housing, land, water, and sanitation. So the location of a Dube Trade Port here and the mandate helps us a great deal to achieve those, because their focus is on education and skills development, environmental sustainability, socio-economic development, women empowerment, youth empowerment, and empowerment of people living with disabilities. So it's not only chasing the bottom line, really. It's about ensuring that they develop in a manner that ensures equity for all residents of the city. They are located within an erythropolis. They have an integrated human settlement expansion program. They are located within that. But more importantly, on environmental sustainability, they are located within a pristine natural environment. And as they develop and expand, they ensure that they protect our natural assets, and in this way they are contributing a great deal in ensuring that there is sustainable urbanization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mbhele, for this first comments on your experience in eThekwini. We will have a chance to dig a bit deeper into that further on during the panel. In the meantime, I understand that the viewers, after a few technical glitches, viewers are coming back to the platform. So that's also great to hear. But now, next on to Mr. Phillips from Hong Kong. Before, again, exploring a bit further how Hong Kong and the whole Greater Bay Area vision has used some of the typical SEZ tools and instruments without being necessarily per se an SEZ. You want to give us a feeling of what is the role of an investment promotion agency when it comes to supporting sustainable urbanization?
Great. Well, hello, everyone. As Jacopo said, Hong Kong's got a fairly unusual positioning, I guess, in the context of having some features of SEZ, but not actually formally being an SEZ. And of course, Hong Kong, as a special administrative region of China, fits into a landscape where there's extensive use of SEZs. And then you put that into the context of what's going on in southern China in this region called the Greater Bay Area, where you've got 11 major urban centers, multiple SEZs, both existing and planned. We've got a very complex and I think dynamic approach towards leveraging both the urban centers, their geographic location, and the presence of multiple SEZs. So it's really quite interesting. So sort of stepping back and looking at that whole Greater Bay Area, where Invest Hong Kong as the investment promotion agency is looking to attract investment from around the world, not only to come into Hong Kong, but also into other parts of the Greater Bay Area. And a key selling point of that is also the SEZs. But overlaying this integrated development, it's not just economic, it's also ecological. So there's an overlay of sustainability and environmental issues in all of the developments. Hong Kong itself operates under a completely different legal system to the rest of China, which gives a distinct proposition, and that's one of the features, I guess, of being a sort of quasi-SEZ. And I think what we're seeking to achieve within the region is something perhaps that we haven't seen globally, with 11 major cities, all in the millions of population, working collaboratively to do economic development in a sustainable way, and at the same time leveraging different economic zones within the region, including some new ones. There's a very recent one announced, which is the Qianhai-Shenzhen Cooperation Zone, which will really be a platform for deepening and opening up of China further, and leveraging the best of Hong Kong and the best of the rest of China. So some really exciting stuff going on, possibly unique to this part of the world, but I think we've got some very exciting ingredients.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Phillips. Just a very brief follow-up question. So you mentioned the Greater Bay Area is probably, to my knowledge, the biggest or one of the biggest combined urban areas in the whole world. So I guess the challenge there when it comes to making this agglomeration of urban areas sustainable is even greater. So from your own perspective, can you give us a feeling on how are you fine-tuning your investment promotion activities to promote the sustainability on investment projects across the urban area?
Yeah, good question. And there's multiple levels of planning, a little bits like South Africa example. We've got national policies, we've then got provincial policies, and then we've got policies in Hong Kong. And they're all interrelated. So if we look at the context of Hong Kong, we've just issued an updated climate action plan. Hong Kong, like many other cities, committed to net zero by 2050. So much of what's in the climate action plan feeds through to the work that we're doing at a global level. But then we also make reference to the ecological plan for the Greater Bay Area and also policies for the country as a whole. So there's multiple levels to it. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, it does. Maybe later we can talk more about what it all means from your own perspective and Invest Hong Kong. But for the time being, let me now bring in Mr. Rivera from Zona Franca de Bogotá. Since launching in 1997, the Zona Franca de Bogotá has really grown into an extensive, diversified special economic zones, as I mentioned at the beginning, hosting about 400 companies and 30,000 employees, if I'm not mistaken. And under your watch, Mr. Rivera, most of these developments have happened under your watch. You've been at the head of the Zona Franca for about 20 years. So, from your own perspective and operating in also a sprawling and somewhat challenging urban area like the urban area of Bogotá, what has been the role of the Zona Franca de Bogotá in supporting the sustainable development of its urban surroundings?
Thank you, Jacopo, for your question, and thanks for for UNCTAD to inviting us to be part of this wonderful panel. Well, let me give you a small context of what the Bogotá Free Trade Zone is. The Bogotá Free Trade Zone is a free zone that is located within the city of Bogotá. It's the only one permanent free zone within the city, and it's a big challenge for us. We are a private entity. We're not a public or governmental entity. That's something that is important to get in context here. We have been working, as you mentioned, since 1997 in order to promote the trade and the development of the city and also of the country. As you may know, Bogotá has the largest cargo airport in Latin America, and that's one of the main ways of getting the cargo into our area. Although, as you know, Colombia has the access to two oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. And as far as Bogotá is the capital of Colombia and has the largest support to the Colombian GDP, around 25 or 30% of the GDP is produced in Bogotá. That's something that gives us the opportunity to provide access to the trade through our free trade zone, and that makes us one of the largest in Colombia due to the number of trade operations that we do with our 400 companies established within the zone for more than $9.1 billion of value of goods through our free zone. We have been working since the beginning with the meaning that we have to comply with all these responsible and sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And we have been working since the beginning with a program that we call Frankly Responsible through a 6 pillars that has given the accomplishment of these goals. These pillars are the following. First of all, we try to get closer the offer and demand of employment, giving capacity and qualification of our people, making sure that all this training is towards the needs of our companies in order to make sure that the training is linked with the employment. And also, we work in trying to articulate the companies that are within the zone with the ones that are outside, to get that link and make that chain in order to make sure that the economic exposure is wider, not only for the companies that are within the zone, but also the ones that are surrounding our area. Also, we work on the dialogue with the communities in order to make sure that we help them in order to have all their needs complied, let's say, and make sure that we are the link between those communities and also the local and the national government. We also work on some externalities, and for sure, the sixth pillar is working with all the environmental activities that we do around the free trade zone. So that's something, or that's the way that we have been working, Jacopo, in order to comply with these sustainable goals.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rivera, and I'm certainly interested in touching upon a few points that you raised, particularly when it comes to linkages with the local ecosystem of businesses and workers, and also externalities and environmental best practices that you have developed. We can touch upon those later, but let me now bring in our guest from Qatar. Mr. Abdulla Al-Misnad. So as mentioned, Mr. Al-Misnad, your authority oversees the development of the country's two special economic zones, the Raf Bufontas zone and the Al Hol zone, and then they are both located in the outskirts of capital Doha. So what has been the role of your authority and the role of these two zones in creating the conditions for sustainable urbanization in Doha? Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting this panel. And just I think to contextualize, for us the two zones that we have are, the first one is adjacent to the airport, and the second one is adjacent to the port. And if you've ever been to Doha, you'll know that the Doha airport is actually almost in the downtown area. So it's very much part of the capital city of Doha. And even the port is only about 30 kilometers away from the city. So we're looking at a very, geographically, the zones themselves are very much part of the urban environment, and they serve a very important role. Both zones are actually multi-use, so they're mixed residential, industrial, commercial, and they're very much integrated into the fabric of the city. So we are on the public metro lines, for example. We are, very much linked directly to the infrastructure as well as to the downtown areas. And so it's really just a complementary part of the city, which has a special set of rules and regulations, which allows for different kinds of businesses to operate. And what we focus on really fundamentally is thinking about either the businesses which require special access to this import-export infrastructure. So it's really, kind of one part of it is really.
I think that we lost you for a second. Mr. Al-Misnad? Can everyone else hear me properly? Okay, so I think that we lost Mr. Al-Misnad. So while we try to get him back online, let me go back to our guest from South Africa, Mr. Mbhele. You mentioned in your first intervention that the free zone, the Dube Freeport, has become a partner when it comes to the municipality when it comes to initiative for skills development, human capital empowerment. So, from the perspective of the municipality, how did you create the conditions to create that link with the special economic zones and with the tenants within the special economic zones? Was it part of a coordinated policy effort, or it was more of a natural initiative from the zone and the businesses?
Thank you very much, Jacopo. Yeah, it was in the main born out of the mandate of Dube Trade Port or to service the majority of industries that are export oriented, but also the city of Durban being the most populated. So it was given that part of their mandate would include improving the lives of local communities. But there was also an effort in the form of different institutions that we have. We have a number of business chambers in the city that on their own engage with the leadership of Dube Trade Port around issues of investment, but also when the Dube Trade Port was formed, the government showed that the board of Dube Trade Port comprises of a wide range of stakeholders, including the representatives of the local businesses. That has helped a lot in terms of influencing how the Dube Trade Port functions, in terms of ensuring that it represents the interests of domestic private sector, but also Dube Trade Port themselves have time and again through their marketing and stakeholder engagement initiatives, they have been involved in roadshows to try to convince a number of stakeholders about their business, the diversity of product offering that they have. So just to ensure that they position themselves as a powerful tool in the hands of the local industries as they seek to improve their competitiveness. So in the process of all of that, the linkages have certainly significantly improved between the domestic private sector and the Dube Trade Port, which has led to all these things, which I said are critical part of sustainable urbanization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mbhele. So very interesting to hear. So it seems like this stakeholder engagement was part of the design of the port itself since the very beginning, and it was also enshrined in its mandate. So this is definitely like a very key policy input also for anyone designing or developing at the moment any such initiative anywhere. Mr. Phillips, I'll come to you in a second, but I would like to pick the brain on this also from Mr. Rivera in terms of, like we mentioned already, those linkages that have been created between the Zona Franca and Bogotá and the surrounding communities, urban areas. So do you want to give us also, share your experience there? How did you promote, facilitate, and establish those linkages that are so vital when it comes to giving substance to that symbiosis between the zone and its urban surroundings?
Yes, of course, Jacopo. Let me tell you. First of all, for us has been very important, the training and the capabilities of the people that works within the zone, having the opportunity to provide the right human resources to the companies that wants to establish within the zone. That's why we have developed very important alliances with the universities and training technological institutions in order to provide that training to the people that is not only within the companies that are working in the zone, but also the ones that are living around the area of the zone, so that we make sure that all of them have the opportunity to work, to have the training, and to have the capacities in order to work within the companies. Also, in order to make sure that that happens, we have a web page in which these people can look out for the employments that the companies in the zone are providing, and they can apply directly from that web page in order to get into those opportunities that the companies in the zone are needing in order to develop their processes within the free zone. Also, we work very closely in order to make sure that some of the businesses that are surrounding the free trade zone are having the opportunity to be a providers of the companies that are in the zone. We develop a directory with these small and micro entrepreneurs that are surrounding our free trade zone, and we give them the opportunity to widen their market, to provide those products and services that the companies are needing in order to get that link between the companies in the zone and the ones that are surrounding our free zone. Also, we work on sharing the practices, the good practices that the companies that the users in the zone have with also these small companies, in order to make sure to get the qualified products and services that they need. So as you see, we try to make sure that that link is always between the people, the communities, the entrepreneurs, and the companies within the zone, in order to assure that the let's say the impact that the free zone produce is not only for the companies that are inside, but also with the ones that are surrounding.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rivera. Also, different perspective from the urban perspective of the zone in this case, but also insightful to see how you try to promote links across the board with universities, with local suppliers, local workers. So let me also bring in. Let's see if Mr. Al-Misnad is now back. Mr. Al-Misnad, we lost you. Oops, sorry, we lost you in your first intervention. So maybe you want to pick it up from where you left, and then my second question to your colleague, to your fellow panelists, was how they managed to facilitate and create that link between the zone and the tenants operating within the zone and the surrounding urban ecosystem. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot. Yeah, sorry, I think I was disconnected for a second. So as I was saying, and I'll just to kind of pick it up. the zones themselves are very much integrated physically into the urban structure. And what we try to do in the zones, as we said, is really everything we do in the zones is to extract or add value to the existing urban environment. So we mentioned a little bit on the import and export infrastructure. The zones themselves are designed to fully complement that in terms of creating the right regulations and ecosystem around logistics activities, especially. At the same time, we similarly work with so within Qatar itself, there's a very big education system. We have a lot of universities, a lot of research, a lot of products being developed onshore. And what we've done is we've also targeted our zones and the regulations there to allow for more value to be extracted from this education. What do I mean? We have a lot of very specialized regulations around whether it's data protection, whether it's safe harbor, whether it's around labor and high-skilled migration, which are really designed to enhance and complement all of these other initiatives that are happening in other parts of the city. And so that's really the main way in which we design our zone, really to take advantage of and enhance whatever is happening inside Doha.
Okay. Also, thank you, Mr. Al-Misnad. Interesting. Also, this other perspective, the regulator perspective. So we have heard more the policymaker perspective, the zone perspective, and with you also the regulator's perspective on how design these rules to fit the overall strategy of the city. So thank you also for this extra perspective. Mr. Phillips, what is your perspective on this, and how does Invest Hong Kong manage to leverage the connections between investment projects and such a diverse and sophisticated urban ecosystem as the city of Hong Kong?
Great. Yeah, maybe sort of two main columns to this. As you say, Hong Kong is highly urbanized, probably the most densely populated city in the world, and very vertical. So if we look at the sort of challenges that we need to meet in terms of further sustainable development, some are very common to other cities around energy generation. We've got a big issue around green and energy saving buildings. Got quite a lot of old stock of buildings, so that takes us into new construction techniques and so forth as well. Obviously a huge amount of carbon, either whether you're knocking down buildings or building new buildings. We've got big issues around a highly sophisticated transportation system, both private, commercial, and a very strong maritime positioning, which is a big emitter. So looking at new technologies in those areas, and then waste reduction in that highly urbanized environment is a big challenge. And that takes us into other areas such as food tech and so forth. And then I guess the other part on the economic side is Hong Kong's role as a financial centre. So green finance, both for projects in Hong Kong, but also Hong Kong's role to support projects across Asia and more widely using green finance is very important indeed. So that's sort of the sort of challenge at the opportunity side. Practically what we do day to day, we work across government like most investment promotion agencies. Similar to some of the other examples, we work closely with the universities and translational research into the commercial space. Some of the big corporates in Hong Kong, very committed to SDGs, using corporate innovation to work with the startup ecosystem. We've got a dedicated program at Invest Hong Kong to help those startups who very often are really purpose-driven and very keen on SDGs, to help them grow and find the right partners. And then there's a final part, which is ancillary, but I think really important. We actually do quite a lot around youth engagements, around SDGs. So as part of our annual startup program, we engage with school kids. And this year we had probably about 25 teams ranging from 8 years old to about 14 who came and presented their commercial solutions to sort of challenges that the city faced. So we're trying to do it at multiple levels, and part of it is obviously shaping thinking amongst the community.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. And I think that we discussed it a few times, but Invest Hong Kong has been one of the first agencies of its kind to have a startups chapter, Startup Hong Kong, which in a way kind of like turn upside down the investment promotion model rather than more of a top-down investment and then trying to steer up development is more of a bottom-up, trying to really nurture and grow talent, which is also obviously an incredibly powerful way to create sustainable urbanization and sustainable development across local ecosystems. So thank you again also for your intervention. So let me now bring onto the panel our two last guests. So let me start with Mr. Herman Pienaar, again, Program Management Officer, Urban Lab Lead at UN Habitat. Mr. Pienaar, I understand that you guys studied in a recent research this connection between sustainable economic zones and urbanization. So what do you make of what you have heard so far? What kind of input do you want to share with the panel?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you to the panelists for some really good insight into this. I think the first area is really to acknowledge that SEZ has tremendous potential in terms of benefiting cities and communities if they are successful and if they are done in a more integrated manner. And I think the main question from our side is really to what extent it would be possible to integrate sustainable development into the SEZ business model and really linking it back to the sustainable development goals. And clearly, as has been indicated in the Hong Kong case and in others, that it's a multi-stakeholder and multi-government involvement that needs to take place, and that deal needs to be brokered in a way. And our proposal is really to look at how can one put the SDGs front and center in that, and look from a more developmental viewpoint to the whole of the city as well. And that would include, incubating SDG activities, promoting sustainable production and services, and maximizing the spillover for inclusive growth. I don't particularly like the spillover word because it intimates that if there is a spillover, then it could benefit the rest. I think it should be a deal that's brokered to deal with some of the major issues within cities as well. Of course, COVID-19 has indicated also to us that there are major problems in cities. This was like a stress test on urban environments, and that we need to look at how we can use the SEZ model to deal with some of those issues as well. UN Habitat indicated these issues at different levels, regional, city and neighborhood level in the Citizen Pandemic Report that's been launched. And it was clear that these weak spots, if you want, within cities, either from an environmental point or social point, or just plain limited access and fragmentation to services, are all issues that could be dealt with if it's done in an appropriate way. So what is it that we can do with that? And really, the response should be a more integrated and holistic planning approach. And part of the whole process there is to understand these issues within the city, to understand exactly what the dynamics within the city is in terms of movement, in terms of where people are living, in terms of where vulnerable communities and those are, and that it's clear what it is that we want to achieve with the development vision for the city, and then to see how an SEZ would fit into that or be able to contribute to that. And in terms of that, the publications such as the New Urban Agenda, and recently it's an illustrated version that came out, and the International Guidelines for Urban and Territorial Planning are good guidelines in terms of how to actually do that. The last point I want to make that relates to, I think, especially what was said in terms of the Bogotá example, and also to an extent eThekwini and Doha, is that it could offer an urban regeneration opportunity, and that we get away from this notion that an SEZ is this standalone island that is new built in a particular area, but that it becomes part of city structure, and that we look for opportunities for urban regeneration, and that it then has a far greater connectedness towards the city and the city strategy for development. And I think that is where one can maximize the spillover effect of the SEZs as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you also to you, Mr. Pienaar, and I totally agree that the spillover definition or word is somewhat limiting. But I like very much the idea of also using SEZ instruments for urban regeneration and in areas that need to breathe new life into their urban ecosystems. So thank you for your contribution, Ms. Stephania Bonilla. Also, UNCTAD was part of this research. So do you want to weigh in also with your own personal comments on this?
Sure, thank you, Jacopo, and thank you to all the panelists. I really enjoyed listening to the examples from across the world about how you've managed to successfully contribute to the sustainable link between special economic zones and the cities. So we're almost out of time, so I'll try and be quick. I'll just highlight 3 key insights from our work that we're doing increasingly on SEZs. And you'll find that in the World Investment Forum, we have an SEZ track, and a lot of events reflecting the work that we're doing at UNCTAD. But on this work specifically that we've been doing also with UN Habitat, I think what really came out as takeaways, and what I've found here in the discussion as well, is the importance of ensuring that SEZs are integrated into urban frameworks and urban planning systems in a long-term perspective. And I think that was very nicely highlighted by Mr. Al-Misnad from Doha, from Qatar. Because we see that if we don't include these SEZs into long-term urban planning, instead of maximizing the sustainable link, we can actually exacerbate the negative, some of the negative consequences of urbanization, like congestion and traffic, among others, or urban slum dwelling. So I think we also saw from Mr. Mbhele, eThekwini, that the linkages with other actors and government actors are important in this sense to make sure that it is well integrated into an urban planning framework. Secondly, I think now and post-pandemic, we see that the resilience and sustainability are really shaping investment priorities for businesses, but also for governments. And so the post-pandemic has provided an opportunity where special economic zones have an opportunity to address sustainability more deliberately. And I totally agree with Mr. Pienaar that it should not be a spillover, it should be a deliberate objective that they should have. And I think we've seen some very great showing from SEZs during the post-pandemic, how they have worked together to address and combat some of the pandemic in terms of providing supplies, transforming some of their production within the zones to produce masks or sanitizer. So we've seen some real ingenuity, and I think that's testament of how working together with other actors, including investment promotion agencies and other city level actors, they can address other sustainable development goals and SDG related sectors. And I think that was very nicely highlighted by Mr. Phillips from Invest Hong Kong, how they are purposefully aligning to the climate action plan. And so that's what we want to see, that the special economic zones align to these new priorities. And my last point is, and I think that was reiterated by all of the panelists, was the linkages the importance of having these linkages between SEZs and the domestic economy in a deliberate way. I absolutely love the word, the frankly responsible from Zona, Franca, Bogotá. I think that's very clever and deliberate, and really shows that it's not just about purposefully wanting to build these linkages, but also jointly understanding the needs, especially now in a post-pandemic. What are the needs of the people within the zone in terms of who are their suppliers, who are they employing, and how have they been affected by the pandemic? And in this sense, to get data, it's also very important for SEZs to work together with local actors to be able to get the data on what has been the impact, how can we redress these linkages if they've been affected by the pandemic, which of course they have, because the SMEs have been very much affected by the crisis. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for the discussion. Back to you, Jacopo.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you, Ms. Bonilla. I think that I couldn't have done any better as closing remarks than you have just done. So I just take the chance to thank again our panelists, Mr. Musa Mbhele from the eThekwini Municipality, Mr. Stephen Phillips from Invest Hong Kong, Mr. Juan Pablo Rivera from the Zona Franca Bogotá, and Mr. Abdulla Al-Misnad from the Qatar Zona Authority, as well as obviously Mr. Herman Pienaar from UNCTAD and Ms. Stephania Bonilla-Feret from UNCTAD. From my end, I think that one thing that I just like to emphasize is really the necessity for a dialogue between free zones, developer, free zones authorities, local government authorities, to really come together and be on the same page to design, when it comes to designing the next steps, the next development stages of each urban area, particularly post-pandemic, in a very challenging situation where obviously the budgets of cities have been shrinking. The economic activity that zones have been able to draw and attract has also been diminishing, and so I guess I mean in the middle of these challenges, it's even more important to steer and carry on that dialogue and be everybody and align everybody's interest in the future vision of each urban area. So this is really it from me. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks all the audience that connected, and until the next time.